Week 8 of the fantasy football season. His running back starts at every matchup this week. Thursday night, Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Chargers. Jordan Mason a start in this one. Last week, once again, he found the end zone. And Jordan Mason, he's a solid running back. Aaron Jones, we don't know when he's going to come back for sure for this Minnesota Viking team. But even if Aaron Jones returns, I think it's Mason's backfield. Physical, back in between the tackles. Good pass protection. The only thing with Jordan Mason, not a good receiver out of the backfield. But when you got guys like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison in this lineup, the running lanes are going to be there. And they have this season for Mason. Kamini Vidal, he's a start. Hassan Haskins, he was phased out last week in the offense. And also, he wasn't 100% going into that ball game. Was Haskins versus the Colts. And we know he can't catch the football really out of the backfield. But Vidal, he had a down game. But this week, back home, Thursday night, should be high scoring. I'd put him in the starting lineup. New York Jets at the Cincinnati Bengals. Breece Hall, it's been a down last few weeks for him. He's possibly going to get traded at the deadline in the next couple weeks. And at least the volume has been there for Breece Hall, where there's no competition. Isaiah Davis mixes in on passing downs here and there for this New York Jet team. But this week in a good matchup versus a Bengal defense that can't stop anyone, he's a start. Chase Brown a start. This Jet run defense really isn't that good this season. We've seen running backs have big ball games versus them recently. Javonte Williams a couple weeks ago. We saw Rico Dotto, Chuba Hubbard. It was a solid 1-2 combo in last week's game. And Brown the last couple weeks is getting things going. So with Joe Flacco in their quarterback, this offense is opening up and these guys are starting to put up the numbers they were with Joe Burrow, Buffalo Bills. At the Carolina Panthers, James Cook, one of the best running backs in fantasy football. This week, a good matchup at the Carolina Panthers, where I think he's going to have his way in this one. And Buffalo, I think they got to run the football more. Even in that game a few weeks ago, Cook, he was gashing the Falcons, and he only had 17 carries in that ball game, and he got up to 87 yards. So this week at Carolina, I think they're going to run more. And if they were off to an early start and a good lead, they will definitely try to run it down a little bit as well with Cook. Rico Dotto, Chuba Hubbard starts. Last week, it was a good 1-2 combo, like I mentioned early in the video in that ball game at the New York Jets. But this week, a tougher matchup versus the Bills. Like I said, if the Bills are off to a 10, 14-point lead in this game, they're going to have to abandon the run. And with Andy Dalton in there, I think the Bills are going to stack the box and force Dalton to try to beat him. But still, these two running backs have been good all season long, especially Rico Dotto. And they're two running backs I would start this week. San Francisco 49ers at the Houston Texans. Christian McCaffrey, his stud season it's been for him. Obviously, when healthy, one of the best, if not the best running backs in all pro football and fantasy football. And after a monster game last week for CMC, I think running lanes will be open once again this week at the Texans. He's a must-start. Woody Marks, a fringe option. Last week, found the end zone in garbage time at the end of that ball game at the Seattle Seahawks. But I think it's Woody Marks' backfield. Nick Chubb, he's on his last legs. He can't do much in the receiving game. And this is going to be a game as well where I believe they're trailing and have to chase points. And Woody Marks will be there way more than Nick Chubb. He's a fringe option. And Nick Chubb, like I said, we haven't seen much from him. He's a touchdown-dependent type of running back. Not going to do much in the receiving room. Have some good yards per carry, but he's only getting 11, 12 touches most weeks is Nick Chubb, so he's a sit. New York Giants at the Eagles. Cam Scatterbo had his breakout game a few weeks ago versus Eagle defense. Over 100 total yards, 3 total touchdowns in that ball game. And this week at the Eagles, I'm going to start him once again. Last week, another nice game it was for Scatterbo versus a tough defense in the Denver Broncos. In Denver, found the end zone. And he's been one of the better backs in his rookie season in fantasy football. Tyrone Tracy a sit. Last week, he did find the end zone with Tracy. He did have 9 carries. But if it wasn't for that big 30-yard touchdown, it was a nothing ball game for Tyrone Tracy. So this week, well, obviously, he's the backup handcuff to Scatterbo. He's a sit. Saquon Barkley a start 2 weeks in a row. He's failed to reach double digits to Saquon Barkley, and that's definitely alarming, obviously, for fantasy owners and this Eagle team. But I just don't see Saquon Barkley playing his former team 2 out of 3 weeks, and in both games not doing much. So this week I think he bounces back, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if Barkley has a big ball game. Cleveland Browns at the New England Patriots. Quinshon Judkins, he's a start. Judkins, a couple weeks ago, he had a bad ball game. And then last week, he had a monster game versus the Miami Dolphins, 84 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So Judkins, he's moving up the rankings quickly in his rookie season. But this week, obviously, a tougher matchup versus solid defense of the New England Patriots. And Judkins, like I said, he's not going to do much in the passing game. So if he's not running wild, this is where New England could limit him, but still someone to put in your starting lineup weekly. Ramondre Stevenson, a fringe option. It's one good week, one bad week type of formula. It's been for Stevenson all season long. And this week in a matchup versus sturdy defense of the Cleveland Browns, where even Achane, I thought they did a decent job versus him in that ball game. He's a fringe option. And Travion Henderson, a lot of people that were big on him coming into the preseason, drafting him 3rd to 5th round range. I've seen him go in a lot of fantasy drafts. And at this point, he's in the doghouse. He's an easy sit. In this game, Chicago Bears at the Ravens, DeAndre Swift, he's been on a mission over the last couple weeks. 2 games in a row, over 150 yards from scrimmage for DeAndre Swift. And this Bear team, this offense is rolling, and that's with the Ben Johnson effect coming from Detroit. You saw what that offense did with him as the coordinator, and now you see him as the head coach here in Chicago, and they're putting up points. So this week in a matchup at Baltimore where their defense can't stop anyone, he's an easy start. Kyle Monangai is sit. Monangai had the best game of his young rookie career last week for the Chicago Bear team, but a lot of that was in garbage time versus New Orleans Saints. And this week at Baltimore, I think this is going to be a closer type of game, especially if Lamar plays in this one. So Monangai is sit, Derrick Henry is start. It's been a so-so season for Derrick Henry. Couple good games, couple horrible games it's been for him. But his last outing before, obviously, they went on bye, he had a monster game, over 120 yards on the ground. So this week versus mediocre Bear defense, he's a start. Miami Dolphins at the Falcons, Devon Achane, he's been matchup proof. The only positive thing it's been all season long is Achane for this Dolphin team. So this week, even in a tougher matchup, but on the fast track in Atlanta, he's a must-start. Bijan Robinson, arguably the best running back in all fantasy football. And this week, I think he has a monster ball game because this Dolphin defense can't stop anyone. We just saw, obviously, Quishon Junkins go for 84 and 3 touchdowns. So it wouldn't be surprising if Bijan goes over 150 total yards in this one and finds the end zone. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints, Bucky Irving, if he plays in this game, even though I think they're going to hold him out one more week with the bye next week, is this Tampa Bay Buck team is a start. Bucky Irving, solid running back, but he is a smaller back, and that's where injuries could play a factor. And obviously they have now over the last couple weeks where he's been out. So if he's in the lineup, he's a start. And if not, Rachaad White will be the starting running back once again for this Tampa Bay Buck team. And we know White, he's been playing solid besides last week's game where he was bottled up versus the Detroit Lions. Alvin Kamara, he's a fringe option. Kendre Miller out for the season now, torn ACL. And they pretty much were in a 50-50 split over the last 3-4 weeks of the season. But the upside really hasn't been there for Alvin Kamara. He's an older running back, and maybe he's starting to hit the decline where, 28, 30 years old, these running backs in that range start to decline, lose a step, and obviously their body can't take the punishment that a running back takes week in and week out. So this week, even in a pretty decent matchup versus a Buck defense that's bad against the run, he's a fringe option for me. Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts, Tony Pollard, a fringe option. Last week, it was good to see Pollard get involved in the receiving game, 6 catches, 43 yards. But the ceiling just isn't there at all for anyone in this Tennessee Titan offense. The offense isn't good, obviously. Cam Ward, I thought would be a little bit better in his rookie season. They fired head coach Callahan a couple weeks ago, but at least it was good, like I said, to see Pollard involved in the passing game. But he's nothing more than a back-end running back 2-3 option this week. So he's a fringe option. Tyjae Spears, he's a sit in this ball game for me. Is Tyjae Spears last week? The work was still decent. Got to get a lot of catches in a game to have fantasy value because he's not really a running back that's going to get the football much in between the tackles. Is Tyjae Spears. And this week in a matchup at the Indianapolis Colts where their defense has been solid over the last few weeks, he's a sit. Jonathan Taylor, must-start running back. Last week again went out there, put up a monster performance, and he's running wild this season. And that's all this Indianapolis Colts team needed, a quarterback that could go out there, make plays, run an offense. And now you see with this offensive line and everyone in sync here with Daniel Jones running the ship. Jonathan Taylor's having a monster season, and this week it wouldn't be surprising if he's the number 1 or 2 back overall. Dallas Cowboys at the Denver Broncos, Javonte Williams, he's a start for me in this ball game. Javonte Williams, it's been a big season for him, and he's definitely 100% recovered from that ACL. It took him a couple years, but now behind this Cowboy offensive line, he's going out there and putting up numbers, and this week it is a tougher matchup at a good Bronco defense. But the juices are going to be flowing for Williams versus former team that drafted him, where he wants to go out there and put up a big performance. So this week at Denver, he's a start. He's got no competition. Miles Sanders out for the year. Jaden Blue, still a young rookie. learning on the fly. J.K. Dobbins, a start. Last week, a decent game. Obviously, they had to abandon the run where they were down 3 scores going in the fourth quarter. They had to abandon the run was Denver, but Dobbins still finished with 80 yards on the ground. Obviously, I want to see a little bit more out of him in the receiving game, but this week in a matchup where I believe this game will be close throughout between these two teams, Dobbins to start. R.J. Harvey a sit. I know Harvey found the end zone last week, but he's pretty much been non-productive all season long, and he's another rookie running back. People were high on him and thought he would take over right away, but they brought in Dobbins in training camp. Dobbins has been solid, but we know Dobbins has been injury-prone, and it wouldn't be surprising if he goes down sooner than later. Sunday night, Green Bay Packers at the Steelers. Josh Jacobs, he's matchup-proof, one of the best running backs in fantasy football. And this week at Pittsburgh, I think Jacobs, he'll go out there, have a good game. And last week, he wasn't 100% with an illness and still put up a big performance at the Arizona Cardinals. Jaylen Warren a start. It's his backfield. I thought Kenneth Gainwell, after that big game, going back early in the season versus Minnesota, that overseas game, he was going to get more involved with Gainwell. But Warren last week, he had a big ball game. I know it was the Cincinnati Bengals where their defense is one of the worst in the league, obviously. But this week in a matchup versus Green Bay where they've had some trouble versus the run over the last couple of weeks, he's a start. And Kenneth Gainwell, nothing more than one of the better handcuffs in the league, even though at times he's going to steal some goal line stampers as Kenneth Gainwell, but he's a sit. And final game of the week, Commanders at the Chiefs. Bill Krosky-Merritt, it's like one good week, one bad week type of deal. It's been with Bill Krosky-Merritt this season. He is a rookie, I know. This offensive line a little bit banged up. And obviously teams are zeroing in when you're out Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin like they were last week. The Cowboys, they stopped the run, got off to a big lead with Dallas, and then they focused, obviously, on stopping them in the passing game. So Krosky-Merritt, to me, in a tough matchup to go to Arrowhead, he's a fringe option. And Chris Rodriguez, Jerry Nichols, they've been involved a little bit. Rodriguez did find the end zone last week in garbage time, but these are running backs, obviously, you can't count on. And they're nothing more than backups, their sits. And now to the Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco, Rashard Smith, they're fringe options in this ball game for me. Pacheco last week had his best game of the season, but still only topped out at 12.7 fantasy points. So Pacheco pretty much a touchdown-dependent running back, and obviously he hasn't been good all season long. In this offense, they're loaded now with Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown in the passing game. So they're going to be a pass-first offense. And Rashard Smith, he was a receiver in college, converted to running back. And obviously Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, they don't do much in the receiving game. And I know last week his work went up big time was Rashard Smith, but obviously that was some garbage time as well where they blew the Raiders out from the get-go. But it wouldn't be surprising to me in the upcoming weeks that Rashard Smith, the work goes up even more and he could be the starting running back in this Chief backfield. But this week they're both fringe options. And Kareem Hunt, last week he got phased out, only 4 carries in that ball game versus the Vegas Raiders. And like I said, his upside is a touchdown-dependent back as well, and he's a sit. So that's running back start, sit every matchup for Week 8 of the fantasy football season.